Welcome back to Devoxx. We're here to talk about more Android with Nicolas. Welcome, Nicolas.
Thanks.
Nicolas, here you're talking about effective image manipulation and on Android. So obviously, Android is a constrained environment because it's a mobile, environment. What are the options for developers that they can use when it comes to images?
So there are various options that you can use in your program. The common ones are probably OpenGL and native, and those two actually have a lot of issues and a lot of constraints that you have to deal with. One of the recent possibility that for Android is RenderScript, which is a new framework, a new language for processing images that has a lot of advantages compared to those two other solutions.
Okay, so we'll get to that and to your experience. Anything against OpenGL specifically or native? I mean, what are the shortcomings before we get to RenderScript? And
no, nothing particular. The only thing is that I guess native. I mean, by native, what I mean is that you simply pass a bitmap to the native side. You process it. It's pretty easy to process. The problem is that if you want to optimize, you are going to have to optimize for particular devices. It's going to be difficult to optimize for everything.
Yes.
And compared to OpenGL, it's a bit slower. You also have to deal with memory, etc., etc.
Back to
all
native.
the problems with
Well,
native, right?
yes.
With some advantages, some inconvenience. OpenGL, the good thing is that it should be fast. The bad thing is, well, support for OpenGL depends a lot on drivers, and some GPUs behave better than others.
Okay.
Some GPUs have constraints that others do not have. You have like a maximum size of textures and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So so you're talking about this because you have experience with this and you've been building.
I've been working this past year basically on the new photo editor in Gallery.
Yes.
Where we actually started the first version that we released back last November last year was mostly using native processing. We were just passing the bitmaps to the native side, doing something in C, and that's it. But since then, we moved a lot more toward RenderScript, and for quite a few reasons. The big difference for us is that we want the software to run on as many devices as possible.
Of course, yes.
And it gets difficult if you have to test and be 100% sure that your code in OpenGL, for instance, is going to work everywhere. So that's why originally we went with native. Even if it's not as fast as OpenGL, it's a more tractable problem to be sure that everything will work well. But if we want to make it faster, to have really good interactive speed, then OpenGL start to look more appealing. But then you end up with all those issues with compatibility and etc. RenderScript, on the other hand, has quite a few nice advantages. One of the advantages is that it's a specific language that actually looks it's basically C99 with vector extensions, which means that it's both a good language for image processing because of those vector extensions. So you can actually write algorithms that are cleaner and simpler and make a lot more sense.
Yes. And
at the same time, it's not particularly different than a shader language or than C. I mean, it's C99. They basically use LLVM, the compiler, to generate that. And then when they take this script and execute it through LLVM, do a bunch of optimization, and more importantly, execute all of that in parallel. So in terms of performances, what you get is something that is completely parallelized, that really takes advantage of all the cores on your device, which is pretty important.
How about the GPU? Can we use the GPU as well?
And that's one of the big things this year, is that we now support GPU drivers for RenderScript.
Okay,
so
cool.
on all the Nexus devices, we do have GPU drivers.
But what does it mean? Do you get to choose as a developer if it runs on one or the other? What's available?
So you can either choose or not choose. I mean, you have the option, right? So if you don't do anything, RenderScript will just say, hey, I'm going to run on the fastest possible thing. You can also specify, hey, I'm going to run on the CPU, which sometimes is a really good thing to do, because the CPU is a lot more predictable than the GPU. So depending on what you do, that might be better.
Okay, interesting. So just so people have an idea of the work you've done, this is the gallery, the editor in the gallery. There's a video online available, so people can, of course,
yes, we posted
people
a video
should
online, and
try
there was
it.
some comments, I mean, some reviews this past week about it. So that's the editor in
And
gallery.
you're doing some pretty heavy lifting with this. It's not just adding a simple filter and be done with it, right?
And I think it's a good example of
So
that
what kind
render
of
script is there. You can use it. It works. It's fast.
So give us
it's not
examples
just a
of,
binary
I
style.
don't know, the type of transformation you're doing or work you're doing and the size of the image maybe you're able to work with, or?
Yeah, so the editor actually works on arbitrary sizes of images. So
Right. And it's non-destructive.
it's non-destructive. We do a lot of effects, not just global effects, but also local effects. All the common ones. I mean, vignette, contrast, saturation. We do a bunch of interesting things like that. What I'm really happy with is that it scales very well, and
Okay.
yeah, it's non-destructive, which means that you can always come back, reapply an effect, change an effect, and it's still going to be at the same.
Right, there's a
quality.
pipeline of effects you
Yes.
apply and you can move back to.
Yeah.
And how about the previews? Do you actually compute this for the entire image, or how do you make that so snappy?
I mean, in general, the way you do it, you can't actually run everything on the full image all the time because
Right.
it's going to be too slow. So what you really care about is to have something that is fast, that is really interactive for the user. So you just cheat,
Right.
What we do in the editor is that we compute everything on a very small preview image, and because it's smaller, we can render stuff at an interactive speeds. The UI elements themselves are animated at 60 FPS, so when you move something, when you move a control, it always follows your actions, which is really what's the important point. The preview itself is very fast, and then we have a progressive preview, so as soon as you stop moving stuff, we compute a higher resolution images and higher until you get the final one-to-one image.
And you have this nice way of comparing before and after.
Yeah, there is some
Nice
UI,
another way
elements,
you apply. I mean, I encourage people to check it out. As end users, maybe not as developers.
Yeah.
So great. Where should people go to learn more about RenderScript?
There is some documentation online.
Yeah, maybe.
The documentation that's there is sadly not as comprehensive as I would like it to be, but the RenderScript team is working on that. This past year, the focus has been more on getting out a compatibility library, which means that, and it's actually a very important point, it means that you can write RenderScripts and you can run your application using RenderScripts on devices that go back to, I think, Gingerbread, the current library, but internally we even made it run on Froyo. So it's good. That actually, it's very comfortable. It means I write some code and I know it's going to work everywhere. So
that actually.
And yet it's going to be fast and performant.
Okay. So on the Android website, there's documentation.
Android website, yeah, exactly. Android website, and
it's going to get better over time, but there's something to start with.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Nicolas, thanks for your time. That's what I wanted to cover here, and see you soon.
All right. Thanks.